Chanel number 5.
You got Chanel on a Spec 4 salary?
I will by the end of the day. Hey, good things just happen to come to me.
Well, this good thing will be at the Officers Club, because I don't date grunts.
We are talking episode 3 of season 2, Tour of Duty. Now, after the 2-part opener, Saigon, we now go into a kind of more of an episodic approach, although there are some through lines through this kind of season. Now, this one is a notable episode because it introduces a new kind of like quite kind of major character, played by Betsy Brantley. That is Dr. Jennifer Seymour, and she is a psychiatrist who is, you know, gone to kind of Vietnam to get more experience, etc., and ultimately kind of gets involved with our group of characters. In particular, Anderson, who she kind of has a somewhat of a kind of a romance with as the seasons progress. But here she's more or less in a professional capacity as a psychiatrist, as the bulk of the story here focuses on a kind of a soldier who seems to have gone rogue and has fragged a kind of chaplain in the kind of the latrines. Now, the army kind of wants to distance itself from rumours that it could be a GI, and instead wants to say it's kind of a sapper because they don't want to kind of like demoralise the men. But the truth of the matter is there is a guy there who is messed up on drugs and is responsible for it. We get a few other kind of story threads involved as well. We have a kind of a prisoner who is seen at the beginning of the episode being held by the kind of the VC. And you know, we get kind of Goldman kind of taking photographs of it. Ruiz is kind of also kind of feeling the stress of the war, and ultimately is becoming kind of mentally kind of fatigued by it. So this primarily focuses on Anderson and Jennifer Seymour. I much prefer the Dr. Seymour character than the Alex Devlin character as a kind of a female character within this. And this one was directed by Edwin Sherin, and I have to say I personally think this is an improvement over the first two episodes, which I have to say I thought were a little lackluster. I much prefer the character, as I say, of Seymour, because I think she's just much more mature, a much more of a kind of a grounded kind of character. And I actually quite liked their interplay with the kind of like the Jennifer and Zeke kind of romance there. And even in this first episode, we kind of see the sparks fly. First episode where she's introduced, and then ultimately he has to kind of betray her confidence to try and get the information about, you know, who this kind of mystery kind of GI is who is fragging the people in the toilets and things. So, you know, this is not a lot. So the next couple of episodes are really not much in the way of kind of like, you know, missions in the bush. It's much more kind of drama, and then this one and the next episode are much more based on kind of the mental state of kind of soldiers within that war, which of course was widely criticised with the amount of Vietnam vets after the war who suffered from PTSD and things like this. And the kind of the overriding sort of theme, really, I suppose, of this episode and the next is that the army just kind of wants them in and out. And this is partly why the kind of the US government kind of distanced itself from the second and the third seasons, because it was a bit more critical of kind of the the US kind of military. As in the first season, they were very much kind of like in support of this series getting made and helped in many ways. So I have to say, like I've said, what works in this movie, this episode for me, I thought Betsy Brantley was a great character. I thought she would the professional attitude that she kind of gives off, I think, is far more interesting than the kind of like the continued love triangle of McKay and Goldman and Alex Devlin. I just thought that was she's a much more interesting and grounded kind of character, and obviously having to kind of deal with the kind of the psyche of all these kind of soldiers and how the kind of the war afflicts them, I think is kind of quite kind of fascinating kind of stuff. And as I say, it gives Anderson certainly a kind of a different set of challenges, so to speak. I thought that was kind of quite good. The only real issue I have with this and the next episode is kind of the same thing, is that, you know, it just so happens now when the Dr. Seymour character comes involved that our, you know, characters in our kind of platoon seem to be developing kind of, you know, mental health issues, when before it was not even kind of mentioned. It just so happens this pretty young doctor turns up, and our, you know, what happens is the story kind of has a few kind of characters that sort of end up kind of being, you know, affected by it. We get a subplot here with Taylor as well, trying to scam kind of new recruits, which adds to that sort of comedy element to it. And we got a guest star from Penny Johnson-Gerald, who I probably know best as the character in the series 24. So I think this is a solid episode. I think it's certainly better than the last two. It's not an action-heavy episode. It's much more of a dramatic episode. But this season is more like that overall, to be honest. But nonetheless, I think it's a good introduction to Dr. Seymour. I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. Let me know what you think of it, and leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.